27th of March, 2012. Early morning. Security specialist Anthony Antolino was heading to JFK Airport.
It was a normal day, you get up early, kiss the wife goodbye, and get in a car, go to the airport. I was traveling to Vegas for a security conference. That flight was a packed flight full of other executives and folks going out to attend the conference.
JetBlue Flight 191 was scheduled to depart at 6:55 a.m. The 2,300-mile journey to Las Vegas would take 5 hours. Anthony and the other passengers boarded at 6:30 a.m., and everyone prepared for takeoff.
I got on the plane. I was in row 10 in the aisle. Got everything situated, started working, doing emails and what have you.
At 10:30 a.m., the plane had been in the air for just over 3 hours.
Everything was normal until I noticed the pilot came out of the cockpit in a very agitated, abrasive state. I was immediately anxious.
Anthony was so concerned, he began filming what he could see happening at the front of the plane.
The pilot was drinking a lot of water. Those small little airplane bottles, but he was putting them back pretty quickly. He kept wiping his mouth, like spittle or stuff building up. You could tell he had an agitated state. His eyes were not really fixed and just normal, and you could see in the faces of the flight crew that they were uncomfortable. There was a lot of awkward looks back and forth between the crew. So I knew that something was not right. What I found peculiar was that when this flight attendant walks away from the beverage cart to attend to a passenger, the pilot reaches across the beverage cart as if to try and grab her and say, "Hey, where are you going? Come back here." That was a startling moment for me.
Anthony watched the pilot walk past him, and for a moment, he disappeared out of view.
The pilot finally went to the back of the plane, to the restroom. He came out of the restroom and proceeded to walk back towards the front of the aircraft. About midway, he started running, a full-on run, straight for the cockpit door. When he got to the cockpit door, he tried breaking into the cockpit. He tried kicking the door down, pounding on the door. I felt like the situation could absolutely turn really, really bad, really, really quick.
Fellow passenger, retired NYPD Sergeant Paul Babakitis, was shocked by the scene.
The worst case scenario running through my head is either the person that was banging on the cockpit door was the pilot or a terrorist.
The flight crew, there was 2 women and a guy. They were no match for this gentleman who was a very large guy. He's probably 6'4", fit. So I took it as the passengers may need to do something to resolve this escalating situation.
To fail to take any action could have dire consequences for everyone.
There was a gentleman. I just kind of tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I think we have a problem." He jumped right up, didn't even ask a question, which was terrific.
As Anthony confronted the captain, other passengers saw something was wrong. Some began to film the confrontation.
Many thoughts were going through my head at that moment, one of which was, what's agitating him? What is he looking for? What is his objective?
We grabbed him and just pulled him away from the door, and we were just holding on to him. He was resisting and struggling a bit.
It was then the pilot started speaking to the passengers.
He looked at me, but as he looked at me, he looked through me. And then he started rambling about Iraq and Iran and talking about military actions and things like that.
He was yelling, they got us in Iraq, they got us in Iran, some mentions of a bomb being on board.
Everyone could see the situation escalating.
And he told me, we're not going to Sin City, and that we have 130 souls aboard the plane. At that point, I realized we're all in trouble.
27th of March 2012, 10:40 a.m. JetBlue Flight 191 was 3 hours into a 5-hour flight to Las Vegas when its captain started behaving erratically. Security specialist Anthony Antolino was one of a few passengers who had gone to confront the pilot.
He said, "It's time to recite the Lord's Prayer." I think that's when the three of us that were holding on to him really just kind of locked eyes and looked at each other. Without saying a word, we just literally put him to the ground. We pulled his legs out, put his face to the ground, and then we all stayed right on top of him. Somebody was holding his head, I had his feet, somebody else was holding his arms, and he was resisting, trying to get up, and he's a pretty big guy. So it was a struggle.
Helping Anthony hold down the pilot was retired Police Sergeant Paul Babakitis.
We were able to pin the pilot on the belly of the plane, and restraining him was a very difficult task, because although he seemed docile while he was being restrained, at any second he could become violent, and you have to be prepared for those acts of violence.
As passengers restrained the pilot,
Amarillo, JetBlue 191, emergency.
the co-pilot declared an emergency.
JetBlue 191, roger for now. Just turn 5 degrees to the left, and if you need something different, let me know. JetBlue 191, emergency, and we're going to need authorities and medical to meet us at the airplane. Yes, sir, they're standing by for you.
Once we had him on the ground, the crew notified the first officer, and we started a very, very rapid and steep descent. They notified us that they were diverting the aircraft to Amarillo, Texas.
It was announced to the cabin the plane would be on the ground in 20 minutes. Anthony, Paul, and the other passengers would have to restrain the pilot until then.
That 20 minutes seemed like an eternity. We just knew we had to keep pressure on this person.
We decided to just stay put and stay on top of him. He tried to get up and struggle a few times, but we just held him on the ground. There really was not much talking. It's interesting in those moments where there's such a heightened sense of danger and adrenaline. There was not much talk at all.
The plane touched down at 11:15 a.m. Waiting outside and ready to board were the emergency services.
The door opened, and I saw a uniformed police officer enter the plane.
With the incident under control, many people began filming.
Please, everybody, please. We don't need pictures of this, please. Everybody just...
A lot of officials came on board. They handcuffed him. We stepped out of the way. They had control of him at that point, and then they took him off the aircraft.
Once he was off the plane, I felt greatly relieved that the threat had been diffused. No one was injured, including the pilot. This was a good ending.
In the aftermath of this event, the actions of the co-pilot were seen as averting a potential disaster. When the captain had left the cockpit in a distressed state, the co-pilot had locked the cockpit door and refused to let the pilot back in.
I feel a lifetime debt of gratitude to the first officer for being able to stay composed, stay calm, and be able to coerce the pilot out of the cockpit so that he could take control and stabilize the cockpit so that we would get somewhere safely.
The FBI took the plane's cockpit voice recorder to investigate whether terrorism or another factor played a part in this incident. The pilot was charged with interfering with a flight crew, but found not guilty due to insanity. The pilot later claimed JetBlue had been negligent and sued for $14.9 million. He said he had been suffering from a brain seizure, which should have been spotted. The case has yet to come to trial.